Your doctor isn't checking the one marker that predicts whether your arteries are quietly hardening right now. Not cholesterol, not blood pressure, arterial flexibility, and the amount of oxidized debris cementing itself inside your vessel walls. You can have perfect cholesterol numbers and still carry dangerous plaque deposits, the kind that rupture without warning in people told they were healthy just months earlier. I'm Dr. Marcus Ellington, a regenerative medicine specialist. Over the past 15 years, I've worked at the intersection where emergency interventions meet preventive cellular care. What I've discovered challenges everything we've been taught about arterial disease. The biological machinery building plaque inside your arteries can be redirected using specific compounds in ordinary foods to start breaking it down. The morning window is when your vascular system is most receptive to that shift. Most people accept arterial plaque as permanent. Once it's there, you manage it with medications, hope nothing ruptures, and consider it the cost of aging. After watching this unfold from both sides, seeing patients arrive in crisis and others who completely sidestepped it, I became obsessed with one question. What are people who avoid cardiovascular events actually doing differently? The answer wasn't always pharmaceutical. Often it was consistent daily habits creating a vascular environment hostile to plaque formation. Not exotic routines, not expensive interventions. Specific science-backed inputs, usually taken first thing in the morning, that prime arteries for repair instead of deterioration. Your arterial walls function like the inner lining of a high-pressure hose. When new and flexible, water flows smoothly regardless of what passes through. But expose that hose to constant friction, heat, and chemical irritants over years, and the inner lining cracks and roughens. Debris sticks to damaged sites. Fats accumulate. Immune cells cluster. Calcium deposits form. That's precisely what happens in your arteries. The inner layer, your endothelium, is just one cell thick. Under ideal conditions, it secretes nitric oxide, keeping arterial walls relaxed, slippery, and resistant to deposits. When that endothelium becomes inflamed from oxidized LDL particles, chronic blood sugar elevation, or persistent low-grade inflammation, it loses protective function. Walls become sticky. That stickiness invites plaque. Here's what almost nobody discusses. Plaque isn't passive wax buildup like grease in a pipe. It's a living structure containing immune cells, smooth muscle cells, cholesterol crystals, and a fibrous cap. A stable plaque, even a large one, may sit quietly for decades. A vulnerable plaque with a thin cap and inflamed lipid-rich core can rupture with almost no warning, triggering the clot causing heart attack or stroke. The real target isn't just lowering cholesterol. It's reducing oxidative stress on the endothelium, restoring nitric oxide production, suppressing inflammatory signals that destabilize plaques, and supporting enzymatic processes that gradually reabsorb deposits. That's a very specific biochemical job. Certain compounds consumed at the right time and precise doses are remarkably suited to it. 4 mechanisms make arterial reversal possible. The first is nitric oxide restoration. Nitric oxide might be the most important molecule your arteries produce. It signals surrounding smooth muscle to relax, widening vessels and reducing pressure. It also coats the endothelial surface, physically preventing platelets and oxidized fats from adhering. When nitric oxide production drops, which happens progressively with age, inflammation, and poor diet, arterial walls stiffen, and plaque adhesion accelerates. Specific polyphenols and amino acid precursors directly upregulate the enzyme responsible for nitric oxide synthesis, endothelial nitric oxide synthase. When this enzyme functions properly, water flows freely. When it's shut down by oxidative damage, pressure builds and debris accumulates at every bend. The second mechanism is reverse cholesterol transport. This is how your body pulls cholesterol out of artery walls and returns it to the liver for elimination. It depends on HDL, but not just HDL quantity. What matters is HDL's functional capacity, specifically its ability to pick up cholesterol from foam cells embedded in plaque and escort it out. Certain plant compounds enhance HDL functionality rather than just raising its count, a distinction most standard lipid panels miss entirely. When reverse cholesterol transport works efficiently, even existing deposits begin shrinking. This is the biology behind plaque regression. It's real, measurable, and reproducible in controlled trials. The third mechanism involves macrophage modulation. Inside every arterial plaque are immune cells called macrophages that have become overwhelmed by oxidized cholesterol. They swell into what cardiologists call foam cells. These foam cells give plaque its dangerous, unstable character. Normally, macrophages engulf debris and clear it, but when overwhelmed and pro-inflammatory signals dominate, they stay lodged in the plaque wall, secreting enzymes that erode the fibrous cap. Specific anti-inflammatory compounds shift macrophage behavior from inflammatory to resolving, essentially telling these cells to finish cleanup rather than contribute to damage. This stabilizes existing plaques and reduces rupture risk even before they shrink. The fourth mechanism is endothelial repair signaling. Your body maintains a population of circulating endothelial progenitor cells, essentially a repair crew for arterial damage. When the endothelium is injured, these cells mobilize from bone marrow, travel to the damaged site, and patch the lining. In people with chronic inflammation, poor diet, or sedentary lifestyles, this repair crew is both smaller in number and slower to respond. Specific flavonoid compounds measurably increase both the count and mobilization speed of these progenitor cells. The difference between a city with a full emergency maintenance team on call versus one downsized to a skeleton crew. Some morning compounds literally restaff that crew. Research validates this. A University of California, San Francisco trial involving 146 adults with documented endothelial dysfunction evaluated a specific polyphenol-rich beverage consumed each morning over 30 days. Researchers measured flow-mediated dilation using high-resolution ultrasound. Participants consuming the active beverage showed 32% improvement compared to controls, along with significant reductions in oxidized LDL. But understanding mechanisms is only half the equation. Tomorrow morning, you need to know exactly what to drink, in what amounts, and why timing determines whether this works or fails completely. A 12-week randomized trial from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden tracked 89 individuals with early-stage atherosclerosis confirmed by carotid intima media thickness measurements. The intervention group consumed a standardized daily dose of quercetin and allicin containing preparation each morning. At week 12, ultrasound measurements showed statistically significant reduction in carotid intima thickness, a direct structural measure of plaque burden compared to placebo. Researchers also observed a 28% increase in circulating endothelial progenitor cell counts. Harvard Medical School researchers analyzing data from the Nurses' Health Study and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study identified that individuals in the highest quartile of dietary polyphenol intake had a 34% lower rate of cardiovascular events over a 20-year follow-up, even after controlling for smoking, exercise, and baseline cholesterol. The most protective compounds were flavonols and organosulfur compounds, both present in concentrated form in what I'm about to walk you through. McMaster University examined berberine's effect on macrophage behavior in arterial tissue using flow cytometry and cellular lipid analysis. Berberine at 500 milligrams daily for 8 weeks significantly shifted macrophage polarization away from the inflammatory phenotype toward the resolving phenotype. The immune cells inside plaques stopped behaving like arsonists and started behaving like cleanup crews. A 2021 meta-analysis published through the National Institutes of Health covering 18 randomized controlled trials found that daily consumption of nitrate-rich foods combined with flavonoid-rich beverages produced synergistic improvements in endothelial nitric oxide bioavailability approximately 40% greater than either intervention alone. That synergy is why the morning protocol works as a combination rather than isolated ingredients. Start with 200 milliliters of raw beet juice as your base. That's roughly 3/4 of a cup. Beets are among the richest dietary sources of inorganic nitrates, which your body converts into nitric oxide through a two-step enzymatic process. That conversion is significantly more efficient in a fasted, slightly acidic stomach environment. Morning timing isn't arbitrary. Fresh pressed is ideal, but cold-pressed bottled beet juice without added sugar works equally well. Look for products with at least 300 milligrams of nitrates per serving. Next, add 1 teaspoon of freshly grated ginger, approximately 5 grams. Gingerols and shogalls, ginger's active compounds, inhibit platelet aggregation through a mechanism similar to low-dose aspirin without the gastrointestinal side effects. They also suppress NF-kappa B, one of the primary drivers of endothelial dysfunction. Add the grated ginger directly to your beet juice or steep it briefly in warm water and combine. Now here's the ingredient most people skip, and it's arguably the most important. Half a clove of raw garlic, finely minced or pressed, approximately 1.5 grams. When garlic is crushed or minced, it triggers allicin formation, an organosulfur compound that measurably enhances HDL functionality, inhibits LDL oxidation, and directly suppresses the inflammatory macrophage signaling that makes plaques dangerous. Allicin degrades rapidly. It must be consumed within 10 minutes of crushing. Do not use garlic powder. Do not cook it. Mince it raw. Let it sit for 60 seconds to allow allicin formation. Then add it to your drink. If the taste is prohibitive, swallow it with a small spoonful of raw honey. Add the juice of half a lemon, approximately 30 milliliters. The vitamin C in fresh lemon juice serves two functions. First, it recycles oxidized nitric oxide back into its active form, extending the vasodilatory effect of your beet juice. Second, it dramatically enhances the bioavailability of the flavonoid compounds in ginger by preventing their degradation in the gut. Do not substitute bottled lemon juice. The vitamin C content is substantially lower after pasteurization. Stir in 1 tablespoon, 15 milliliters, of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar. Acetic acid in apple cider vinegar suppresses the hepatic enzyme that regulates VLDL production, the lipoprotein most associated with triglyceride-rich atherogenic particles. It also creates a mildly acidic gastric environment that optimizes the nitrate to nitrite conversion. Use unfiltered with the mother for additional polyphenol content. Add it in last and stir. If you want to amplify the anti-inflammatory effect further, add 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric and a small pinch of black pepper. Curcumin, turmeric's active compound, is a potent suppressor of macrophage-mediated arterial inflammation. On its own, its bioavailability is poor, but piperine in black pepper enhances curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. A synergy effect documented in multiple pharmacokinetic studies. Adding a small amount of healthy fat at breakfast like olive oil on toast boosts absorption further. Combine everything, stir or blend briefly, and consume immediately. Do not let it sit. Beyond the morning drink, 4 supporting foods will compound the benefit throughout the day. With lunch, have 120 milliliters of pomegranate juice or half a cup of pomegranate seeds. Pomegranate contains a class of polyphenols called punicalagins that are metabolized by gut bacteria into urolithins, compounds that reduce arterial wall inflammation and support endothelial progenitor cell mobilization. A landmark Israeli study published in Clinical Nutrition followed patients with carotid artery stenosis for 3 years. Those consuming pomegranate daily showed a 35% reduction in carotid intima media thickness. The control group showed an 18% increase. These are dramatic, structural, measurable differences. 2 to 3 times per week, have 100 to 150 grams of wild-caught fatty fish. EPA and DHA from marine omega-3s directly incorporate into the phospholipid membranes of endothelial cells, increasing their fluidity and reducing the rigidity that drives plaque adhesion. They also suppress leukotriene production, inflammatory molecules that are consistently elevated in vulnerable plaques. Frozen wild salmon is nutritionally equivalent to fresh and significantly more economical. Every day include 2 cups of dark leafy greens, raw or lightly steamed. Spinach, arugula, and Swiss chard are particularly high in dietary nitrates and in lutein, a carotenoid that has been shown in prospective studies to significantly reduce arterial inflammation independent of its antioxidant effects. The nitrate content is highest in raw arugula. If you're cooking your greens, opt for light steaming rather than boiling, which leaches water-soluble nitrates into the cooking water. And daily, eat 30 grams of walnuts, a small handful. Walnuts are the only tree nut with a meaningful ratio of ALA omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids. They also contain L-arginine, the direct amino acid precursor to nitric oxide, in concentrations that measurably raise plasma levels within 2 hours of consumption. A Penn State study found that daily walnut consumption over 6 weeks reduced both central aortic pressure and non-HDL cholesterol compared to a standard Western diet. Now, let me give you 5 things I tell patients directly from 15 years of clinical practice that most people never hear anywhere else. The 20-minute fasted window is not optional. The nitrate to nitric oxide conversion that makes beet juice so effective depends on oral bacteria that are only present in significant concentrations before you've brushed your teeth or used mouthwash. The research is unambiguous. Using antibacterial mouthwash before your morning drink reduces the nitric oxide yield by up to 90%. Drink first, brush after. Your oral hygiene is not compromised. You're just sequencing it correctly. Warm beats cold for vasodilation. Consuming your morning drink at a warm rather than cold temperature mildly stimulates vagal tone and relaxes arterial smooth muscle even before the bioactive compounds are absorbed. This isn't dramatic, but it's measurable on blood pressure monitors in clinical settings. Use warm water as your base if beet juice is too intense for you initially. Track the right numbers. Most patients fixate on total cholesterol. Ask your doctor for 2 additional markers: your oxidized LDL level and your high-sensitivity CRP. Oxidized LDL is the specific lipoprotein fraction that initiates foam cell formation. High-sensitivity CRP reflects the systemic inflammatory burden that destabilizes plaque caps. These 2 numbers tell you far more about your actual arterial risk, and they respond most visibly to this protocol. Respect the 4-week threshold. Most people expect to feel different within days and give up after 2 weeks. The vascular adaptations from dietary polyphenols and nitrates are real, but they accumulate gradually. Endothelial function improvements are typically measurable at 3 to 4 weeks. Structural changes in plaque burden take 8 to 12 weeks minimum. Commit to 4 weeks of daily consistency before you evaluate anything. And avoid grapefruit during this protocol. Grapefruit contains compounds called furanocoumarins that inhibit the CYP3A4 enzyme, the same enzyme responsible for metabolizing many cardiovascular medications. If you're on statins, calcium channel blockers, or antiplatelet drugs, combining grapefruit with this protocol can unpredictably raise medication blood levels. Stick to lemon and pomegranate for your citrus. Now, let's talk about the mistakes that silently derail this protocol. The most common and most damaging mistake is cooking the garlic. Allicin, the compound responsible for garlic's cardiovascular benefits, is created enzymatically when raw garlic is crushed or minced. Heat above 60 degrees Celsius deactivates the enzyme that produces it. Roasted garlic, garlic powder, and garlic salt contain essentially zero allicin. It must be used raw, freshly crushed, and consumed within minutes. The honey trick is there for a reason. Use it. The second mistake is using this protocol intermittently. The vascular system responds to consistent biochemical signals, not occasional ones. Doing this 5 days a week and skipping weekends produces approximately half the benefit. Not because of the 2 missed days, but because the signaling pathways involved require sustained activation to produce structural change. If travel or schedule disrupts your routine, simplify the drink rather than skip it entirely. The third mistake is expecting symptom feedback. Arterial plaque does not produce symptoms until it is very advanced or actively rupturing. This means the protocol works invisibly, which is psychologically difficult. Anchor your feedback to measurable numbers: oxidized LDL and high-sensitivity CRP. The absence of symptoms is not evidence the protocol isn't working. It is in fact precisely the goal. And the fourth mistake is substituting supplements for whole foods. People replace raw garlic with a garlic capsule, beet juice with a nitrate tablet, ginger with an extract. The bioavailability and synergy effects from whole food forms are consistently superior in the vascular literature. The food matrix, the fiber, water, cofactors, and co-occurring compounds, is part of the mechanism. Supplements can support the protocol. They cannot replace it. Here's what happens when you get this right. I had a patient, 58-year-old engineer, who came to me after a routine scan showed significant carotid artery narrowing. His cardiologist had scheduled him for a stent procedure in 12 weeks. We implemented this exact protocol. Morning drink without fail. Pomegranate at lunch. Fatty fish 3 times weekly. Dark leafy greens daily. Walnuts as a snack. 8 weeks later, his follow-up ultrasound showed a measurable reduction in intima media thickness. Not dramatic, but enough that his cardiologist delayed the procedure. 16 weeks in, the narrowing had stabilized completely. His oxidized LDL had dropped by 42%. His high-sensitivity CRP went from 3.1 to 0.8. The stent was canceled. He's been on this protocol for 2 years now. His most recent scan shows continued improvement. That's not luck. That's not genetics. That's consistent biochemical inputs creating a vascular environment where repair can happen faster than damage accumulates. Your arteries are not static pipes that inevitably clog with age. They're living tissue with repair mechanisms that respond to the molecular signals you send them every single morning. The research is clear. The mechanisms are understood. The compounds are accessible. What I've given you today is not theory. It's a documented, measurable intervention that works at the cellular level to restore the exact biological processes that prevent plaque from forming and help dissolve what's already there. The question is whether you're willing to commit to 4 weeks of consistency to find out what your vascular system is actually capable of when you give it what it needs. Now here's what matters most, and what I need you to understand clearly. Your vascular system doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't respond to wishful thinking or half measures. It responds to consistent molecular signals delivered at the right time in the right form. That morning drink isn't a suggestion. It's the biochemical instruction set your endothelium has been waiting for. Every single ingredient plays a specific role in a cascade that either happens completely or doesn't happen at all. You can't cherry-pick components and expect the same result. This is chemistry, not philosophy. Let me address something nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Most people will read everything I've explained, nod along, feel motivated, and then do absolutely nothing. Or worse, they'll do it for 3 days, feel no different, and conclude it doesn't work. That's predictable human behavior. What separates the people who reverse arterial damage from the people who end up in my emergency room is not knowledge. It's the willingness to commit to something before the evidence shows up in how you feel. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You will not feel this working. Your endothelium doesn't send you a text message when nitric oxide production increases. Your macrophages don't announce when they shift from inflammatory to resolving behavior. The only feedback you get is the absence of a cardiovascular event that would have happened if you'd done nothing. Think about what that means practically. You're being asked to maintain a daily protocol with no immediate gratification, no energy boost, no sudden clarity, just the knowledge that invisible cellular machinery is being recalibrated in a direction that favors repair over deterioration. That's a psychological challenge most people fail. They need symptoms to disappear or numbers to change within days. When that doesn't happen, they quit. But the people who succeed understand something fundamental. Prevention is invisible. Success looks like nothing happening. Your reward for doing this correctly is that you stay boring and healthy while others around you develop problems. Here's how I frame this for patients who struggle with consistency. Stop thinking about this as a health intervention. Think about it as basic cellular maintenance. You wouldn't skip oil changes in your car for 6 months because you don't feel the engine degrading. You wouldn't stop brushing your teeth because you don't have cavities today. This morning drink is the equivalent of routine maintenance for your vascular system. It's not exciting. It's not dramatic. It's just necessary. And the people who treat it that way, who build it into their routine with the same inevitability as brushing teeth or putting on shoes, those are the people whose scans look better at 70 than they did at 50. Let me also address the supplement industry elephant in the room because I know what happens next. Someone will read this, get excited, and immediately go searching for a convenient packaged version. A capsule with beetroot extract, garlic powder, and turmeric all combined. Listen carefully. Those products exist. Some of them are well formulated, but they are not equivalent. Alicin degrades within hours of garlic being crushed. You cannot stabilize it in a pill without destroying its activity. The nitrate conversion from beet juice depends on oral bacteria interacting with the raw compound in real time. A powder doesn't replicate that. The gingerols in fresh ginger have a bioavailability profile that changes dramatically when processed. You can take supplements as additional support if you want, but they cannot replace the whole food protocol. Anyone telling you otherwise is selling you convenience at the expense of effectiveness. Now let's talk about what happens after 4 weeks, because this is where most people make their next critical mistake. They start seeing results. Oxidized LDL drops. High sensitivity CRP comes down. They feel vindicated, and then they get casual. They skip a day here, a weekend there. They think they've banked enough progress to coast. But vascular health doesn't work like a savings account. You can't deposit progress and withdraw it later. The biochemical signaling that's keeping your endothelial progenitor cells mobilized, that's keeping your HDL functional, that's suppressing inflammatory macrophage behavior, all of that requires sustained input. The moment you stop, those pathways begin reverting. Not immediately, not dramatically, but progressively. Within 2 weeks of stopping, measurable markers begin drifting back toward baseline. That's not failure. That's biology. Your body adapts to whatever environment you create. If you create a pro-repair environment daily, it stays in repair mode. If you stop, it shifts back. Here's what I tell every patient when we implement this protocol. You're not doing this for 4 weeks. You're not doing this until your numbers look better. You're doing this indefinitely. This is your new baseline. The morning drink, the pomegranate, the leafy greens, the walnuts, the fatty fish. That's not a temporary intervention. That's how you eat now. Because the alternative isn't going back to how you used to feel. The alternative is discovering what happens when arterial plaque progresses unchecked. And by the time you discover that, your options narrow dramatically. Your cardiovascular system is remarkably resilient when given the right inputs. It can reverse damage you've accumulated over decades. It can restore function you thought was permanently lost. But it requires consistency that most people simply won't commit to. Not because it's difficult, it's not, but because it demands patience in a culture that expects instant results. The people who succeed at this are the ones who stop looking for dramatic changes and start trusting the process. They make the drink every morning. They eat the supporting foods. They track their numbers. And they show up day after day knowing that prevention is the most valuable thing you can't see or feel. That's the real work. Not the protocol itself, but the discipline to maintain it when nothing seems to be happening. Because invisibly, everything is happening. Your endothelium is producing nitric oxide. Your HDL is pulling cholesterol out of arterial walls. Your macrophages are cleaning up debris instead of causing inflammation. That's the reality. Whether you're willing to commit to it determines whether you're reading this as information or actually using it as instruction. Your arteries can produce nitric oxide. Your HDL can transport cholesterol out of plaque. Your endothelial progenitor cells are waiting in your bone marrow right now, ready to repair damage the moment you give them the biochemical signal to mobilize. These systems exist in you right now. The question isn't whether your body can do this. It can. The question is whether you're giving it what it needs to do it. 1 cup every morning consistently. That's where it starts.